Howdy, y'all. I'm back with another Art 173 lecture video. And in this one, you can see I've written a little function here, sound into data. Um, so I want to talk about Francisco Lopez a little bit. And I want to talk about Francisco Lopez also in class. And I want to talk about what it means to make sound recordings. And I want to talk about how it's done. Really briefly. I'm going to try to keep this under 10 minutes. We'll see how I do. All right. So, Francisco Lopez, first of all, you recall, if you did this reading, and if you didn't, I recommend it. It's not that long. He talks about in here the tension, really, that exists between sounding sounds and what they mean to us. Or at least that's how I read this. Maybe you have a different idea. Let's talk about it in class. He says, I believe in the possibility of a blind listening, a profound listening, freed as much as possible from the messiness of the world. And in fact, if you look at his technical writer that he sends out to places that want to host his concerts, you can see that he actually imposes that blind listening on his audience. I don't really love this for lots of reasons, but it just looks like Abu Ghraib or something to me. I feel like you want to trust your audience to make their own decisions about how they narrate your sounds. But this is a long tradition, most famously sort of brought forward in musique concrète, but existing in all music, since Romanticism, let's say in Europe, right? All European music since Romanticism. There's this big reaction to the idea that music would be telling a story of something that happened in the world. That music should be about music. And I don't know, I surely like music that's about music and not, I don't like romantic music. So maybe there's something to it. But sort of emotionally and intellectually, I do take issue with this idea that we need to wear blindfolds in order to listen, and that our memories don't matter. Pierre Schaeffer himself, who was the sort of the most famous of these musique concrète composers in France, at the end of his life, he was sad because he felt like he had failed. That it's actually impossible to divorce sound from its meaning. Let's talk about it in class. Is it possible? I don't know. Maybe you have a way. Um, one of my sort of roads into this has been sound effects. I've been really interested in sound effects. I was a sound designer. I have a huge sound effects library. I really don't make a lot of recordings anymore because my sound effects library is so big. I just go in there and I find the sound. I've got a lot of sounds, and if you need sounds that you can't record or find, holler at me. I'm happy to share with you. Um, so my response to Francisco Lopez was this web artwork that I made quite a while ago, and it's not great. I made it in P5 that we're gonna learn soon. At some point, I've been meaning to redo it and make it look nicer, but you can see you get those sounds as you hover over them. And it's obviously kind of a little bit about the digital jungle we live in nowadays of sound. Sort of was a response to having spent some time in a rainforest. My own response to having spent some time in a rainforest. Happy to answer any questions y'all have about this in class, but I won't dwell on it for now. I want to talk about a few other people. I mentioned sound effects. I love them. I love people who make them. One of the people who makes them is this woman, Ann Krober, who I've had the good fortune to know for a while. She, along with her husband, Alan Splett, did all the sound design for David Lynch, an absolute titan of the business and the art of sound effects. And she uses a lot of times these contact mics that we're going to build in class. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in class, and I'm going to encourage you to use those along with the Zoom recorder to explore the world of sound sensation. Now, the one of the earliest uses of something kind of like a contact mic was actually the first recordings, and these are really neat. I think these phono autographs were a 19th century invention that took in sound waves and then drew marks on charcoal coated paper. And these were never really intended to be listened to, but there's a link on the syllabus to where you can listen to them. Because somebody from Berkeley, boy, I wish I would have had that idea, actually took these images and turned them into sound. And we'll return to this later in this semester as we talk about sound visualization and data visualization more broadly. I think it's a really neat project. I think it's a really neat type of sound. I think it says a lot about what sound can be, should be, and is. I think it's fascinating to look at these drawings and and think about sound and think about minimalist artworks of all kinds. What else did I want to say? I wanted to say that Chris Watson is another amazing sound recordist. Often also uses contact mics, but uses all kinds of mics. You can see here he's using a very long distance microphone that gathers in sound from a long way away. Boy, listen to these. This guy is amazing. Just great stuff. And there's a video on the syllabus too of him talking about sound that I hope will be of interest to you. So the last thing, and there's a few other artists on here. Janet Cardiff is somebody who makes these audio walks. You can explore at this link her work. She, in contradistinction with Francisco Lopez, records the space that you're in, puts you in headphones, under headphones. She records the space binaurally so that when you listen to that recording on headphones, it really sounds like you're there. And then she talks about herself, mostly, and about the space, and she invents narratives for that space. So there are so many different possibilities. On the other end, people like Jakob Kierkegaard and Marian Amiche, I think, bring forward this like pure sound idea in interesting ways. Both them working auto-acoustically, working on the sounds that your ear generates as it listens. Really interesting stuff. And if we have time, we can listen to a piece by Marian Amiche in class that I often like to share with students. So before I go, I know this video is pushing up towards my boundary. Before I go, I want to just talk about how sound is converted to digital bits and bytes. So last time we were talking about color, bits and bytes. With sounds, what we do is we sample that sound wave. So back on this drawing, you can see there are these sound waves, and this analog representation, this paper is going to move at a certain rate of speed so that the needle moves this way and the sound wave is recorded, is traced on here. Similarly with digital audio, what we do is we move forward through the sound file as the sound is coming in. Remember, sounds come in as electrical current. Sounds, when they come in through a microphone, like this beauty right here, they come in as electrical current. A little diaphragm moves, and electrical pulses come out of a cord, usually right here. We'll see that with our contact mics. And those electrical pulses, when they get to a digital audio converter, those electrical pulses are converted into bits and bytes at a frequency rate, which means the number of samples that's taken per second. And, if you're listening to a CD or CD quality file, that'll be 44,100 times a second. So a lot of these little samples. And then We also have the bit depth, which can be 8, 16, 24, 96. And if you remember from last class talking about bits, we know that corresponds to a kind of resolution. We know that then these bits, and you can see this one is a 4-bit. So we just have these different possible binary numbers. If it's 16-bit, that's a whole lot of numbers. So that would be 2 to the 16th power, and it's 65,536. If it's 24-bit, it gets a lot bigger really fast, right? Because it's exponential. So that's going to be over 16 million possible values for each sample. And that roughly corresponds to the loudness of that sound file. And as we go forward, we'll work more directly with this data later on in the semester. As we visualize sounds, we'll be coming back to this idea. But I wanted to just give you a quick overview of how that happens. There's a bunch of different sound file types. There's so many. MP3 is an important one, obviously. Why? MP3 files are small. It is the most common sound file format used today. We can exchange them on the internet very easily. Other really popular files are AIFF, popularized by Apple, and of course the WAV file, which was popularized by Microsoft. The distinction between an MP3 and a WAV file is a really important one. MP3 files are compressed, meaning they throw out a bunch of data. WAV files are uncompressed. WAV files are much bigger in file size. They have much more data. They have they have more information about the original sound. Sometimes we have to use WAV files. WAV files, because they're uncompressed, are also more easy for computers to handle. So there's a link on today's page about converting different kinds of files using Audacity. And I've already put links up about how to use Audacity. I think it's a great little tool. If you're going to use a Circuit Playground Express, you want a 16-bit mono wave file at 22 kilohertz sample rate. And hopefully now you understand what that means. We need to take, if we have an MP3 file or we have a WAV file that's recorded at 44 kilohertz, we need to, maybe it's a stereo file, we need to convert it into this file type, which is what the Circuit Playground Express wants to use. And many microcontrollers actually prefer that sort of file type, maybe 8-bit, maybe lower kilohertz. There's lots of different possibilities out there. So I can show you how to do that in class, or maybe I'll make a video on it. There's also one right here. So I wanted to just leave you with one of my favorite little cool things, which is a video that really is intended to show what happens when we convert a WAV file into an MP3 file. And the visuals, I think, are roughly corresponding to the data, but I don't really know. I do know that the sound, if you watch this video, which is linked on the syllabus, the sound is the remnants of a conversion to MP3. Now, what does that mean? So you were hearing a little bit of it. Go and listen to the whole thing. It's really beautiful, I think. So when we convert a WAV file into an MP3 file, what happens is we cut out all the data that we think a listener won't notice. We cut out all the data we think a listener won't notice. So we do that sort of psychoacoustically. We psychoacoustically filter the data that we think a listener won't notice. And the truth is, in most cases, they don't. I don't. I don't know if you do. I'm interested to know if you've had experiences where you're like, wow, I know when I listen to an LP on my high fidelity system, it sounds better, but I think that's just because I like records. I think in a really, really high resolution audio playback system, you kind of can tell the difference. I think, but I'm not sure. And lots of people have done these tests. You probably just have to do your own test to decide what makes you feel good. Um, and on that last point, I think that uncompressed audio files do make you feel better, even if you can't say like for sure, like I for sure know. I think there is something there, but I'm not sure. Again, I am not sure. Um, but that's pretty much it for this lecture. I'm going to try to, as I said, keep all these short. If you have any questions, holler at me in the Discord, or leave a comment here, or talk to me in class. Till next time.